Yeah, I've been camping here once. We had a camper van. We tried out someone's camper van. Yeah, wasn't won over by that. A bit like you and the carp fishing. I thought this isn't really proper. Got to be under canvas, really.
Yeah, you don't want to be in the dry and warm and pleasant.
No, exactly. That's not what camping's about.
No. You want to be really vigilant, really.
There's a bit of there's something in there. There's a spiritual discipline in suffering.
I gave up camping when Luke was about 7, and I was like in charge of all the youth work in West Yorkshire at the time for the Methodist Church. In any case, I thought it would be nice to take him camping, bit of father-son bonding, you know. So we went and met the architect and did that. Then we went over to, is it Fountains Abbey near there? And he said, I want to go to the toilet, Dad. So I said, okay. And he was gone for ages. And he came out and I said, are you right? He said, oh yeah, I had to do number 2, you see. So I said, fine. We then set up the camp, okay? So we had beans and sausages, you know, sort of thing that dads and children had. And then I'm sitting outside thinking great thoughts about fatherhood and, you know, beautiful area. And I suddenly hear a cry from inside the tent, and he's thrown up all over his sleeping bag.
Yeah.
So I get him out, clean him up, think, you know, Father, I've got to do things better than this. So put him in my sleeping bag.
Yeah.
I'm outside again thinking about great thoughts, and he throws up all over my sleeping bag. At which point it also starts to rain.
It's proper camping, this is proper camping.
So I phoned up Biddy and said, we're coming home. So when I got home, she got a bath ready to put him in and clean him up. All the stuff had to go in the washing machine, and I've been camping since.
Have you not?
No.
I was about to ask whether this.
It's terrible. I'm not doing this. This is terrible.
Dear.
I mean, I'm very fortunate. We've got 1 or 2 friends that have got cottages, and very kindly used to let us use.
You enjoy a bit of cottaging, do you? Sorry.
You always lower the tongue. Why do you always lower the tongue? Very kindly let us use their cottage.
Should I be watching this float, by the way?
Yeah, I was going to say, you keep an occasional eye on the float.
Occasional.
Of course, it might well be that the carp will go for floating crust. But I've got a funny feeling that although asked to bring a loaf, you haven't bought one.
Oh, I thought that was what you meant for my dinner.
No.
I thought that was just my lunch.
I said, can you bring a small white loaf, was the phrase in the email. Can you bring a small white loaf? Instead of that, you bought yourself about 5 tons of sandwiches. That's not at all what I was talking about.
I've got some leftover Halloween snacks. That's for us later. And but what I do have, look, I've got some bread. Look at that.
Is that just loaves?
That is just slices of bread.
Right, we'll have a go at that in a minute, yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Not complete.
No, I'm impressed.
So you gave up on the father-son camping. Did you do any other kind of holiday type things with them? Or?
Yeah, well, we've always gone fishing together.
Okay.
I mean, my main bonding with my brother was fishing, really. He's a man of few words, but we can do the fishing. We get on really well. He's a very, very good fisherman, so I've learned a lot from him.
Yeah.
I've taken Luke. Luke and I have a remarkable track record with it, really, consistency of not catching anything.
I've got a feeling that's going to be our theme of today. Kind of wonder about going away with the kids and what's worked. With Lara and I have talked about it. We planned last year after last summer that we'd both go away with one of the children on our own for a weekend.
Yeah.
And we both do it on the same weekend.
Yeah.
And then we'd take the other child and just spend
really
a bit of one-on-one time with them.
Yeah.
it's a year and a half on, and we've not managed to do it yet. But we it's a nice idea.
There's quite a lot of churches that do sort of lads and dads weekends and things, aren't there?
Yeah.
Which is quite a nice.
Yeah, and I think it's but equally, I think sons with you better not be crossing my line there.
No, it's not crossing your line because I
That's
should
right.
keep it miraculously under control.
Yeah, I'm very impressed. Very impressed. I also think for dads and daughters as well, because it's daughters pick up their role model. They're kind of if they're straight, they're going to pick up their future partner from what their dad was like, and I kind of think that's.
Do you think there's a measure of truth in that girls marry their fathers and boys marry their mothers?
I've certainly seen it a lot more with the girls marrying their fathers type thing, the same kind of personality traits, for good and for ill. I was just talking to someone yesterday about it, and we were kind of charting, going back to our kind of grandparents and what they were like, and then what that was like for kind of who they married, and yeah, we could see it very clearly. And I do think, as a general thing, as ever with these rules, it's a general thing. So, and I was thinking about it this morning when I was off for a run this morning. I was thinking, what if Maya married someone like me? I thought, I'm not sure if I like the idea of that. I know what I was like as a youth. And it did make me wonder whether that's the reason that a lot of dads disapprove of their daughters' choices in men, because sometimes they choose someone that's a little bit too like them, and we know the game they're playing. We know they're kind of, because they're similar to us, we know their dark side as well as their kind of good side.
Yeah.
What about your kids?
I was just thinking, I mean, neither of my girls have married, I wouldn't say anybody remotely.
Oh, good.
Like
Clever
me.
of them. They've learned.
They've learned. Yeah, they thought, I've had to put up with him while he's. I don't want to spend a lifetime with somebody like that. I mean, Rebecca's married Jim, who used to be the Cornerstone manager, who is, I mean, you know Jim, very laid back, doesn't worry about anything.
Is that not like you?
As his father, joking, as his father-in-law, I would say, to the extent of irresponsibility sometimes.
I hope you're watching, Jim.
You know, and he's great, but he's not like me at all. And in fact, Becca would say, I think my daughter, that she's had to sort of learn to loosen up a lot through being married to Jim, which she sees as a very positive thing. And can you see, sorry, just if you look at my float and just look to the other side of it, you can see there's quite a big fish moving in the reeds there.
Oh,
you can see them all moving. And
am I
then
allowed to get over there?
Mary has, I mean, she's married somebody who's just totally different to me, really. Brendan is strong and silent. You know, he's a lovely guy. But he's one of these people who doesn't say much, but when he does say something, everybody listens, because it's normally common sense.
Okay. Pressure's on now to get a bit further. I've not managed to get out very far yet.
I'll flick it. Yeah, the answer is to flick it.
No, I'm not getting caught. Where do I go? Kind of break social deal. Oh no, I'm in the trees. Right, let's do this. I'm gonna swing.
Worried about my eyesight.
Well, that was
Leave
terrible.
it there. That'll be alright. That'll survive.
Oh, it's because I got hooked around the
thing. One of the things that I really regret was my father died suddenly when I was 17. And so I never reached that time where I could sort of talk to him
as a man to man, you know. And also, I didn't know, looking back, I just didn't know much about him in a sense, you know. And in fact, I just signed something this weekend for Luke, our son, to look at his war records, because Luke's writing a book about men in war, and he's trying to focus it on, you know, he needs leads on each chapter really. And my father was in Sierra Leone during the war, running the railway, or helping to run the railway there. So he was in the army, and they wanted people from the army who got experience of running the railways, and he'd been working on Liverpool Street Station, LNER. And you think about it, you know, he'd never been abroad, and he got on a troop ship and went to West Africa. And in fact, the troop ship was sunk as it left the harbour, I think. And then he was out there for 4.5 years. You know, no leave or coming home. He nearly died when he was out there. He got beaten up, refusing to take a bribe, and he woke up and he got his coffin on stilts beside him.
Oh, blimey.
And when he came back, my brother, who was born in 1938, found it very difficult to accept him as a father, really.
Yeah.
Because all he'd been used to for 4.5 years was my mother. And it must have been hugely difficult. And I never reached that stage where, you know, I just sat down and found out what he thought about life. What do you hope for your children?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a good question, because I think it's very, partly because it's a continual point of contention between my wife and I, of our different hopes and expectations. For what I hope for my children is that they are happy and satisfied in whatever they choose to do.
Yeah.
I don't have great expectations that they'll change the world or be hugely successful in this, that or the other, but I want them to be content and be able to find joy and happiness in wherever they are, in their relationships and themselves. Whereas yeah, I think my wife very much wants them to be able to be successful and be well educated and attain good things. Whereas great if that comes along, wonderful, but most of all I just want them to be happy.
I'm sure she'd be the same.
You'll have to take her fishing sometime to find out. I think it is, but I think the way that
you see happiness come is, yeah, I remember talking to a guy who's spent a lot of money sending his kids to Cheltenham College and Cheltenham Ladies College, one at each, you know, and they completely messed up their lives, really. And he was quite bitter about it. He said, you know, I've given them everything, what they made of it. I do think actually we can put a lot of pressure on our kids that we don't mean to, but they can see the sacrifices that parents have made, and they feel a bit guilty about it. There's a wonderful, best book I've ever read, best novel I've ever read, a book called Gilead by Marilyn Robinson. The Wayward Son, who's a drunkard, marries a black woman, which of course wasn't approved of in those days, but his whole thing is really guilt that he's not lived up to what his
Parents
parents,
expected of
what
me.
his father
Yeah.
father wanted. I think of, we had a huge healing ministry in our last church, and a lot of the people that came for prayer would come for prayer for their children, and would pray out of their disappointment in their children, really.
Really, that's interesting. Yeah.
And one of the things that I used to say to them was, you just got to love them, regardless of what their sexuality now is, or what trouble they've got into, or what their lifestyle now is. You're just called to love them. That's all you can do. But you could also imagine these children, if they'd known they were being prayed for like that,
Yeah. Huge pressure.
would have, to constantly disappoint parents is a hard thing, I think. Or to feel that you're not to disappoint them, but to feel that you're disappointing them, that you're not achieving what they meant to.
I mean, it's that side of it that I kind of hope that you don't pass on. That's why I really kind of am nervous of passing that on, especially when you kind of think you want your children to kind of do the best that they can do, but actually if you're just trying to get them to, it's that whole thing of parents can sometimes, that we can kind of project what we wanted of our lives onto our children. Think, well, we didn't manage it, so therefore we're going to make sure, try and get our children.
What about the Christian faith then?
In what way?
How, I'd say one of the most consistent prayers that Billy and I have not been about whether or not, we've prayed that they'd be happier, they'd get decent relationships, or get a job if they were miserable, hadn't got a job or something, but that they would come to faith.
Yeah. I mean, that, if anything, for me, that's like the biggest thing that I hope they have. Partly because I believe it's the root to that kind of, that self-confidence, that happiness, that joy, that groundedness is knowledge of who they are in God. So for me, that's, because I thought, while you were talking, I was thinking, well, I didn't mention Christianity, but I think that's because it's almost a given that that's the most important thing. Of it all, whatever they end up doing, if they're able to kind of return to God, that's key. That's key. And it would be, and I think that's where the disappointment might come from me, is actually if they didn't make that choice, then I'd be really disappointed. I'd be really disappointed. And
would it matter what sort of choice? I mean, if your children became raving, charismatic, evangelical Trump supporters, would that count? They've come to faith.
I quite like charismatic evangelicals. Consider myself obviously I'd want to talk to them about why they believe some of the Trump supporting things, and we'd have rigorous discussion around that. But I don't think I'd be disappointed in them for making that choice.
Okay.
I think they're wrong, but the disappointment's kind of that's a deep thing to be disappointed in your children. That's a fundamental deep.
And what about if the faith they came to is the Muslim faith or the Hindu faith?
I almost think that's better than nothing. But obviously, I strongly believe that they're missing out on the fullness of faith,
Yeah.
the fullness of belief, because I think that's there's only kind of this is the slightly controversial side of things in a modern climate, but I think you never find the fullness of God in other faiths.
Yeah, I would hope so.
If you want to,
Yeah.
the only way to the Father is through me. That line of Jesus, which to me says, well, actually, if you want to know the fullness of who God is in all of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, all the dimensions of God, then that comes through the Christian faith. That comes through Scripture and encounter. So other faiths, I do believe, capture something of the truth of God, but I think it's not the full picture. How about you?
Well, I would take the same line as you, really, that I think it's very difficult these days holding on to the Christian faith in a way that doesn't make you look as bigot, because ultimately, I've got to say that as a Christian, I believe that the Christian faith is the right way and the only way. So almost by definition, I become a bigot because I'm saying everything else is invalid.
Yeah.
I can admire it, I can respect it, but I can't agree with it.
Yeah.